All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This week, I wanted to talk about a topic which has actually come up several times in the last month or so with a few different types of clients, and it's about whether it's time to combine your finances together as a couple. Now, there's a few different ways to do this, and of course, every different scenario is different, and every relationship is at different stages. So the first thing I just want to drop is that it's really important that you are in a position with your partner where you feel comfortable to be ready to do this. It's definitely not something that you do with a stranger. It's not something that you would do with someone that you've just maybe been with for a couple of months. I mean, you might, but it's very risky, of course. And there are different ways to do this as well. So today's going to be very general. Of course, it helps to have someone there to be by your side, like an advisor, to help guide you through the process and to just ask questions, really, and to be there to support you where needed. But the first thing to really ask yourselves as a couple is why you're actually doing it. Now, what I mean by that is it's really important to be clear about what your goals are, what your vision is, and what you're trying to do. And the reason I mention that is because many times I see couples that are dealing with their finances together, but they've got different goals. They're working towards different things. So step one, I'd say, is to work out your why, work out what you are trying to achieve, why you're even deciding to share your money together. The second thing is just honestly being upfront about your situation and just having a good discussion about each other's spending habits. And I've mentioned this many times, but we all have a different relationship with money. So some are spenders, some are savers. To some people, money equals status. So just really understanding the other person and their relationship with money. Now, if you know someone well enough, you probably know the answer to these questions already, but it's still worth talking about it and just being upfront about what your strengths and weaknesses are, just like going into a business partnership or a relationship. Really, you usually would talk to each other about your good and your bad habits. The other thing as well is just making sure that you've got a fit that works for both of you, a strategy that works for both of you. And there are different ways to do this. One is to have to share just some of your expenses and having like a 50-50 arrangement for certain household expenses and things that you both spend your money on, like food and groceries and rent, mortgage repayments, if you have a property together, electricity, etc. And the other thing as well is to maybe have a joint savings account that you can do together or a joint emergency fund. The other step is to put it all in together in one big pool. And in every circumstance, in every couple really, is not going to be the same. And there are some strategies that suit some over others. And there are some strategies that would make some couples feel comfortable compared to others as well, of course. But in a perfect world, a couple would be able to literally combine all of their income together, whether somebody earns twice as much as the other person or not. They'd combine all their expenses together and they essentially would just manage it as one big pie. And the reason I say this in a perfect world is just because there are situations where one person will earn more than the other. There are going to be situations where one person takes time off work, whether it's to have children or whether it's a career break or to study. And as long as both parties are comfortable with this type of arrangement, it just means that you're looking at things as an overall picture and as a team, essentially. Now, in many situations, it's important to set boundaries. Setting boundaries can be whether each person has their own fund, where it's essentially a no questions asked fund, and they can spend that spending money on anything they want to. Another one could be if a person isn't comfortable sharing part of their wealth with the other person and doesn't want, wants that essentially to be theirs. But even at that point, I would argue, depending on how deep you are in your relationship together, as to whether it makes much of a difference. Because at the end of the day, if two people are together and they're managing their finances together and they are going to be together, legally, a de facto couple, really are entitled to each other's assets in the event of a separation. But secondly, they, long-term wise, each person's assets are shared. Or what is one person's is the other's. And there is something very, there is a trap to be aware of, and I think also a scenario to avoid, and is when there is, some like someone is in a toxic relationship or an abusive relationship, or they should probably avoid exposing themselves to a situation where they are, vulnerable, or there's the risk that the other person, one person, can take control of everything as well. So when I talk about setting boundaries, it's about either setting boundaries as far as what each person can spend, setting boundaries as far as what two people would like to merge, and thirdly, setting boundaries as far as control is concerned. So ensuring that both people have just as much control as, one person has just as much control as the other at all times. That can be done by having accounts where two people need to sign to transfer money out of a certain account. One could be where one person can take money out without asking the other, but the other person has visibility and they have access to all those things. So as you can tell, there are different levels here and different thresholds, and it really depends. Every single couple I've ever sat down with is completely different. Yes, there are some similarities, but things are so different. But as you can tell, in a perfect world, everything would be combined. But as I said, we don't live in a perfect world, and you just need to really see with your partner what you feel comfortable with and what you both feel is going to work in the short term and the long term. The other thing to discuss, and this is probably one of the most important ones, is to review your finances regularly together. And what I mean by that is just literally reviewing your finances together, as in discussing them together, setting in a regular check-in, whether it's once a quarter or once a month, or once a year at least, with a financial advisor or someone, but to review things, to see how things are going, to see, is this working? Are we saving money? Are we sticking to our investment plan? Are we working towards our savings goals? Are we managing things well? Are we both happy? Do we both feel like we have enough freedom? These are very, very important questions. And sometimes it could literally just be a matter of sitting down and asking some of these questions. Of course, sorry, not sometimes, always asking these questions early on, such as, finding out each other's strengths and weaknesses, but also reviewing them regularly, because things change over time, and what somebody wanted 6 months ago may not be what they want today. So, as I said, there is definitely no magic formula. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. And there are many different ways to approach merging finances. As I said, one is to do it in stages and initially share certain bills, certain savings accounts, and certain investments. One is to essentially just go all in one hit as well. The other thing to consider, and I just really want to emphasize this, is that as a couple, there are going to be many, many different, there are going to be ups and downs personally, but also financially. And these ups and downs are going to mean that from a financial perspective, you might make mistakes. You might look back at certain decisions and think that probably was not a good decision. And that's when you would essentially sit down together, just like any dispute or any conflict that occurs in a relationship, and talk about it, to look at where things are. I mention this because when couples are starting to merge finances, or when they're managing their finances together, conflict occurs. And as soon as it's not being managed well, or the blame game is being played, then it can cause conflict. It can cause a really high level of friction and regret. And one person might think, this was a terrible idea. I shouldn't have done this. And essentially, you've probably heard the saying, once bitten, twice shy. It happens. And I meet many couples where one person maybe was in a previous experience where things weren't managed well, and they want to merge their finances, but they're scared because of their previous experience. So it's important to manage conflict properly. It's important to manage this merging process properly. And it's important to monitor it regularly to make sure it works. And lastly, I'd say a contingency plan or a process that really shouldn't be ignored is just discussing what would happen if things just don't work out. As a worst case scenario, what's the exit plan? You may not see it happening, it may not happen, but just discuss what's the exit plan. Will we just split everything halfway down the middle? Will we just look at what we brought into the relationship and, like a prenup essentially, and just separate things that way? What is it going to be? And there are ways to track it, of course, if everything's done digitally. And it's important that I know this isn't a business relationship, but if you can document it somehow, or at least write it out, or at least just make sure you're on the same page and that it's recorded somewhere, it does make a very big difference. So I hope this has helped. I hope this has given you a starting point, or at least things to consider. And I hope it's, I've shared a couple of ways where it could work out and some where it may not. And that is reality. And we need to accept reality and just work with all the risks, no matter what the financial decision we make, whether it's investing, saving, or merging your finances together. What we do know is, as a couple, as soon as you work as a team, you are more likely to achieve your goals. You are more likely to work together as a team, be on the same page, and do better, be better, and feel better together. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.